Thanks for tuning in to That's What I Call Marketing, the Cannes Sessions. Brought to you by Friedman International, the international campaign experts taking the pain out of your multi-market campaigns. Welcome to That's What I Call Marketing, the podcast where you will hear from the leading lights in the marketing world and listen to their unique insights. Well, I hope you have had your Kellogg's cornflakes because you're going to need them for this episode. Yes, we are talking all things cereal. I'm joined from Cannes by Jenn Carkner, who is the VP of Kellogg's Cereal, and Stephen Duggan, who is the Senior Director of European Marketing at Kellogg's, to talk about See You in the Morning. Now, anyone in the European markets will probably have seen the new See You in the Morning campaign that was launched earlier this year. It is a wonderful campaign and brought not just Cornelius back to life, but it brought Jurassic 5 to the world of advertising in the soundtrack. It was an amazing campaign. It felt big and beautiful and bold. Masterbrand work, and I get to sit down with two of the people that were involved in this. They worked with amazing agencies as well, of course, and we talk about how the process came about. We talk about the story behind it all, the challenges they faced, how they went about addressing some of those challenges, some really clever things they did to bring people along internally. So you have to listen in for that. And of course, we talk about how they thought about the international European scale of the campaign. And as any of you know, in global marketing roles, internationalization is a challenge. And of course, our partners in these episodes are Friedman International, and they are so well placed to help you with removing the international pain of your marketing campaigns. So definitely when you hear some of the challenges that Kellogg's faced, I'd say it's going to resonate with a lot of global marketers. So definitely check out Friedman International and get all the help you need there. If you're enjoying That's What I Call Marketing and can do us one small favor, and that is to like, rate or review this episode, or even share it with one other person who you think would enjoy it. It really does help us reach even more amazing marketers just like you. So let's get right into it with Jenn and Stephen from Kellogg's. Jenn, Stephen, thanks a million for joining me on That's What I Call Marketing. We've so much to talk about, but first of all, let's do introductions. Jenn, I'll start with you.
Super nice to meet you, Connor. I'm Jenn Carkner. You can probably tell from my accent, I'm not Irish. I'm Canadian and have had the privilege of living in Ireland with my family for the past 5 years, leading our cereal business for Kellanova. You might say, who is Kellanova? Kellanova is the parent company of the Pringles brand, of the Cheez-It brand, and the iconic Kellogg brand, which we're going to share a bit about with you today.
Amazing. Stephen.
Yeah, nice to meet you, Connor, and thank you very much. Stephen Duggan's my name, so currently Senior Marketing Director for Europe, reporting into Jenn on cereal. Very fortunate to be in the Kellogg business for nearly 21 years now.
Right.
Predominantly in marketing roles, having started in the Irish business on sales and then migrated into marketing in the UK, and now back in the European remit, looking after European cereal. So really great.
Right. We'll have to touch on that journey from sales into marketing.
Yeah, no.
Tell me about that transition. What happened? What was the moment that you were like, it's more fun?
Yeah, and you might be familiar. I did my undergraduate in DIT back in the day.
Right,
so in Mountjoy Square, and did 4 great years there under study in marketing. Went out into the world and worked for Aircom at the time, in a sales capacity. And back then, the traditional way into marketing was through sales. So spent kind of 18 months to 24 months in the field in the Irish business, selling our snacks produce at the time. But I was very fortunate. We established a European presence in marketing around that period and expressed an interest to move into there, and that's kind of how I started my journey in marketing.
Amazing.
And I think when a business like Kellogg, with the brands that we have and their willingness to spend and support them brands, there's no better organisation to be in terms of learning your craft and getting to do great advertising in particular.
Having that setup of being able to learn your craft, continuously learning in the business is so important, and I do get that impression from Kellogg's through the years that it's really invests in people and learning and continuous growth.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, look, if you look back to Kellogg now, is a nearly 120 plus year business, and the foundations of it are kind of sales and marketing, and that's how they establish the brands and the presence that they've got. The bedrock of all of it in terms of driving growth is marketing. So there's no better organisation to be in, so very fortunate from that perspective.
And Jenn, you mentioned Kellanova. became a parent brand, like it was more of a parent company, I think. Well, am I right?
We've been treating it a bit like a company.
Okay.
And it actually was one of our most underutilized superpower assets. And I think it really has just unleashed the potential of the Kellogg Masterbrand. It's also meant for Stephen and I, we lead the biggest Kellogg cereal business in the world. And so we get to be a bit at the epicenter of those decisions. And that's a true privilege and a huge, huge opportunity.
Yeah. And you mentioned, Stephen, the 120 years. Like, there's a bit of weight of responsibility sometimes when you've got this legacy brand that is, I hate using the word brand and love in the same sentence, but there is a bit of love for the Kellogg's brand.
No, absolutely. Like, I think you always are kind of standing on the shoulder of giants and predecessors. And I think your job in marketing, but in any walk of life, is very much to kind of leave what you touch and what you can influence in a better position than the last person. And it's a rolling cycle. People always move on, but it does come with heavy responsibility. And I think the responsibility is more from a consumer perspective. Like, these brands are on people's homes right across the globe in the European region, which we're accountable for. And we have a massive responsibility in that they go out and spend their hard-earned money on our products each and every day. And they need to live up to the expectation. And ultimately, a brand is a promise, you know what I mean? So
yes,
if they're spending their money, they need to be satisfied with what they're spending on. So that's a massive accountability, and one we don't take lightly at all.
I love the work of promise to the customer, and it feels like you believe in that, I think.
Absolutely, and you have to, and particularly in a category like cereal. It's a challenge category. It's a challenge category for brands, and as I say, brands are at a premium price. So for consumers, particularly in the times that we're in now, if they're going out and spending their hard-earned money, you need to be there delivering what they expect and qualities that underpins all of that.
And I definitely want to get onto pricing. This is the great thing about this. We're going to talk about a lot of the 4 Ps of marketing, because pricing is a key element. But Jen, talk to me about the master brand. How these things don't happen overnight. Kind of that move to saying, right, now is the right time for the master brand.
Sure.
Yeah.
So the context outside of the business, or within the business, I guess, but definitely outside of it. But then when you actually step into the deep dive of the category performance and our brand performance, we have a challenged category, as Stephen said. And all of the brands, 17 sub-brands right within our Kellogg portfolio, they're hungry for money. And in order to really grow the love, grow the consideration, grow the value equation with consumers, you had to make tough choices. And when we did a really deep assessment of the business with our insights and analytics partners, they showed us some pretty convicting equity data. And, the bottom line is, Connor, we've been looking at the cereal category, and our brands were very, very strong within that smaller circle of brands within cereal. We have the best equity brands within that category. But when you step back into the real world of brands, the only true superpower power brand that we had was the Kellogg Masterbrand. And so we kind of looked at ourselves and said, we absolutely have to back the Masterbrand and use that as our most distinctive, most meaningful, most relevant, most powerful asset to float all the other boats and support all the other sub-brands. So that's the transformation journey that we're on. The other thing I'll mention is that we did a really deep piece of work to understand, what do people think about mornings? What do they think about the Kellogg Masterbrand? And the truth is, they love the brand. So I know you said don't use the words love and brand in the same sentence, but we're in this really fortunate position that for almost 120 years, our predecessors have been building this iconic, very, very valuable brand that people trust, that people recognize. And our opportunity was to really nurture it, but not live in the past. Bring it into the future, create a more relevant, more connected, more culturally, basically aware brand that could meet the needs of today's consumers, not just the past 100 years consumers.
I'd love to hear about the discussion then, maybe internally, without getting into internal discussions too deeply, but it became really abundantly clear to you and Stephen that the master brand is the route to go. Talk to me about then selling that in or bringing people on board. That's always interesting.
Sure. So I'll maybe start, and then I would love for Stephen to build on this one. So it really started with a core team of us having a clear ambition, strategy, and plan, right? So we had to be really clear on what's the problem we're solving, how are we going to solve it, and what is this transformation journey that we're going to go on. And like all marketers, we kind of coined that transformation the new dawn for Kellogg's, right? So
nice.
We rallied our team around this new dawn, and really it was a comprehensive strategy. It wasn't just about the marketing model that we're going to transform, but it was really about our entire end-to-end business. And so our conviction was getting quite strong, right? And as a team, we had built this strong bond. But then we realized, man, do we have a lot of stakeholders to align. And when you want to transform, you have to think where you're going. I almost think of it like a road trip. You have to know where you want to go. You have to help people figure out how you're going to get there. And then you have to build some belief along the way, right? So we're very fortunate that we have a lot of key meetings, like every big company, a lot of alignment meetings. But some of them gave us a really amazing opportunity to showcase the vision, to win the hearts and minds of the company. And I'd love Stephen to tell you a bit more about the hearts and minds part.
Yeah, thanks, Jen. And I think, like Jen has said, Connor, it all starts with a strategy. Being very clear what is your strategy and what is your kind of North Star. And again, we're very fortunate in the business that we have meetings with individuals, whether it be a junior level right up to kind of top senior management. And one of the key meetings is kind of with a top 150 leaders event annually, traditionally, and it happens in kind of Q4 of every year. And in November 23, myself, Jenn, Rod, who reports into Jen, still looks after our innovation effort, and Christine at the time, who used to work within Jen's team as well, is now managing our Pringles business. We stood on that stage with our top 150 leaders and outlined the transformative strategy that we wanted to go on. And it was basically two key pillars to it in terms of a supply chain transformation and then our communications model. And the communications model was this theory that we wanted to migrate to a more Masterbrand support model. And this is all the evidence today why it's right and the reason for it. And everyone nods their head and goes, yes. And you come away from events like that, and it's not until you have one-on-one sessions with senior stakeholders or junior stakeholders, are you really sure? So you're telling me you want to take the investment that we've got, say, in a brand like Tresor, massive brand in France, 13% market share. So, and you're saying you want to take that investment and put it against the Kellogg Masterbrand, and then you have these conversations throughout the organisations at various different levels. But you always get back to why are you doing it? What is the evidence telling us as to why we need to get there, and what is it going to look like when we get there? But they're not easy conversations, and I'll come back to it. It does turn around, and it turns around on the back of work, showcasing the work and what you get to it.
And one more small story from this whole journey of alignment. I think what we realized is that it would be more powerful for our employees to hear from consumers and also hear from other employees. So we have an amazing internal comms team. They create unbelievably emotionally connecting videos. We decided to make this video about cereal. We call it Cereal Matters, Breakfast Matters, Cereal Matters. And we had employees and consumers tell the stories of Kellogg's and what it meant to them during their youth, during their adult years. We had women, some of them on our team who had a baby, and the very first picture that they have in the hospital is their baby with a tiny box of cornflakes. And I think people's eyes just were opened to the reality that actually it wasn't just consumers that loved our brand, it was employees that loved our brand. And if we were going to help create the next generation of cereal consumers, it had to start with us. We had to believe that this was possible. So we went on this amazing journey of stakeholder alignment, building belief, building ambition. The session ended with a rendition of Nina Simone or Michael Bublé's New Dawn, full band playing.
I mean, really?
You've got to create some theater, right? So that's what we did, Connor. It was like one of those special moments within the journey of our transformation.
That's incredible.
I think, and it's great to reflect on this journey, because I think what we did there is we tapped into the raw emotion behind kind of cereal and what it means. And very, again, fortunate to work in an organisation where there's a lot of long-standing employees within that organisation, 20 plus years service. And they're there for a reason, because the culture and indeed the brands and the business itself, and they're really passionate about cereal. And I think because of Calanova as a business, we as cereal, and we continue to do, we fight for investment against Pringles. Pringles is a Goliath in the snacking category. So you can imagine the conversations we have over money and the importance of investing in cereal. And I think that really grounded everyone with regard to, we've got something here in cereal and we need it to go and back it. And that's ultimately what we did.
Along these journeys, there are it doesn't go from I'm picturing you being carried out on stage in the demand, and everyone cheering, Stephen.
I don't ever happen.
But then you have that moment, and you kind of going, right, there's a bit of traction here, there's belief. As you say, then there's one-on-one meetings where people were like, are you sure? Even after that, there's going to be moments where things get derailed. Can you share any of those moments and kind of how you got things back on track? Because I think it's really interesting to hear those stories.
Yeah, look, And I think one of the challenges of our role is it's a regional role. So we've accountability for producing communications that serve the region. It's not just the UK or Irish market, it's France, Spain, Italy, and indeed others. And one of the challenging pieces around that is how can you get to work that resonates everywhere? And it's not always going to resonate perfectly everywhere. There's always going to be nuances, and that's what's really challenging. But in the main, it needs to resonate everywhere. And I think the key thing for us in this work was unlocking that insight in terms of an insight that was universally transversal, could go across all markets, and it was a deep human truth. And the insight behind the work that we got to was this idea of kind of you do you moment in the morning. And if you don't get that, you will compromise the start of your day. And that was a universal truth that everyone could relate to. Yeah. And when we went and developed the work and wrote that into the brief as in terms of what we wanted to communicate, everyone could resonate with it because they've self-reflected on themselves. You're absolutely right. If I don't get my 5 minutes in the morning to do whatever with a bowl of cereal or to myself, it does compromise my start of the day. And if you compromise that start of the day, ultimately you can have a bad day. And that's, you know what I mean, getting to that insight. And it wasn't easy, but like we worked really hard. We did a massive ethnographic study, probably the biggest one in my time in the business, 300 plus consumers qualitatively right across the region, and partnered with our agency, Amelia, the strategist in our agency partners, Leo Burnett, and did a phenomenal job of really getting to a really strong universal insight.
Which is great. And like, I think insights, we can overuse it and underuse it in marketing sometimes, but unlocking those insights that kind of create that growth are fascinating. But you've touched on it a couple of times now, but that big challenge is obviously the global local conversation. And I've worked in a global role before where it's like, yes, this is right globally, but actually feels very different. And then how you have the conversations about the right things with people at a local level where it's not too nuanced or too particular. And I'm sure when it got to the work, that was quite interesting because how do you bring people along the journey? And then people's going, but we don't have buildings like that in Ireland, okay?
Well, and we had to be quite thoughtful about that too, Connor. I think one of the things we did was just every step of the way, we wanted to bring people with us on the journey, like not sell it to them, but actually bring them on the way. And every single person who touched this campaign has helped sharpen it and make it better. And I think specifically on the work and kind of aligning globally and locally, we're very fortunate in the sense that we had a lot of freedom globally. So our global CMO, Charisse Hughes, she was actually a massive influence on our creative excellence journey. So at about this time last year, she kicked off a program where some of us were fortunate enough to be part of the Cannes Lion Creative Excellence and Effectiveness program. We spent time in New York, we spent time here, and that was really what sparked our ambition to hit that North Star of creative excellence. We redefined and kind of leveled up our ambition. So from a global perspective, all we had was champions and cheerleaders who were also helping us build capability. Check. Locally, a little bit more tricky, right? So within our roles, we have a European leadership team. And actually, again, we're very, very fortunate because our CEO in Europe, Dave, he's a creative genius. And he's so bold.
Is he from a creative background?
He is from a creative background, but you can, if he listens to this, he's going to get a laugh. But, he is innately wired for creativity. He'd be one of those CEOs where it would be absolutely expected that you go into a meeting to review creative and he will have had a playlist that he thinks you should consider for the soundtrack of the ad.
Which we need to get to.
And my boss and Stephen's boss, she would have moments where she'd really see the emotional connection and really help us pull that out. So our senior leaders were, again, helping us raise the bar and helping us align the rest of the organization. Where the tough stuff happens is in the local markets, right? Because each of them have, for very good reasons, specific needs. My biggest brand is this. My biggest business problem is that. And just like you said, this ad, I'm not sure that people in France are going to feel great about Cornelius, rocking up in buildings that look like they might be more like Spain. But actually, again, we just tried to really understand where are they coming from? How can we listen to some of their concerns? Not perfectly all the time, but really listen to what they wanted and see how could some of what they were bringing to the table help strengthen the campaign further. Great example of that. In the PR activation of the campaign, we made sure that our Cornelius activation was locally relevant. So in the UK, Cornelius, a giant 7-meter rooster, woke up all of Europe from the most easterly point of UK.
That's right. Yeah, that was
in
amazing.
Continental Europe, Cornelius became this animated shadow on some of the most iconic buildings all over Italy, all over France. So right away, you found a way to make it more locally relevant, more culturally relevant, and that helped alleviate some of those concerns. But that's still a daily struggle. Like, that is still our life. And we, if our marketing partners from all of the region are listening, of course, we absolutely love those things. But it is one of the hardest parts of our job.
It's it really is such a hard part of working in a global organization and trying to figure it out, because you want to listen. You want to hear the things that are important, but you can't bring everything. And I always kind of reference The Simpsons, obviously, but the episode where Homer meets his long lost brother and he goes, Homer, you're the everyman, build me the everyman car. And Homer puts everything on the car and it's an absolute disaster. So I would always say, we're not building Homer Simpson's car. And I said,
we are stealing this one. I love it.
Yeah. I sent the clip to people going, this is not where we want to end up, like crashing the business. So it's how you ask the questions to extract the things that are important. Were there any kind of tricks you got to, and I don't mean tricks because that sounds awful actually, because you're not trying to trick people, but are there any kind of techniques? Like, one of the things I did before was I asked people what they loved about the ad first, instead of what won't work in your market.
Yeah, I like the adage myself. It's like a camel is a horse designed by committee. So it's that. But as Jenn said, it's just listening, and it's like one of the comments I remember getting back from the work, and I'm sure you've seen the work in the kind of the mainline 60 execution, but we've seen in our vignette where there's a guy commuting on a bus, and I remember distinctly one of the comments we got back from one of the markets was, no one commutes to work on a bus in our country.
Yeah.
What is this? It's just like, you're telling me no one goes in a bus to work, and you go, yeah, no one, right? And you're just like, and you take comments like that at face value, I mean, as a bit of a red herring, and going, really, is that the case? But you got to listen and appreciate it and understand, look, ultimately this work is not going to fail or be successful on the basis of us showing someone commuting on a bus. There's a bigger thought here, a bigger construct, and it's a more powerful idea, and I think it's getting people to get to that in terms of what we're trying to achieve with the work overall is the most important thing.
Yeah, it's as someone said to me, it's a perennial challenge in this work. And it's how then, in terms of localization, like I'm lucky enough to be partnering with Freedom International on this series around and they're helping brands think about global to local. Was there much work then? Do you package it up and send it to the markets? How does that work?
No, and I think this is actually one of the great piece about this work, and is right from the get-go. Like we've Leo Barnett as our lead creative agency, we'd Landor kind of as our brand world agency, and this work was all about not just communications. We did a whole new branded entity that sat behind it as well. But you've Cara from the media perspective, and one of the other agencies that we partner with does all of our transcreation work, and this is the first time that we brought them in from the get-go, right at the briefing stage, so that they were feeding into the brief before we actually briefed Leo Burnett with regard to, right, what is it weaving within the context of this brief, from your experience, won't work in X, Y, or Z market. And they partnered with us right through from briefing stage through to execution. And then when it comes to execution, there's loads of nuances, obviously, that you need to adapt for and account for each market. But one of the key things was having them with us as an integral partner right through the whole journey.
Talk to me then a bit about Cornelius. We love Cornelius. You didn't just bring Cornelius to life. You superpowered Cornelius. Talk about when that kind of came through and you were like, oh wow.
Oh, I love this part of the story, and we'll probably both divide and conquer here a bit. So if you kind of step back, we did a big distinctive asset audit, let's say, and we realized we had a few massively under-leveraged but highly distinctive assets, and Cornelius was one of them, one of the most recognized characters in the world and completely intrinsic with the Kellogg Masterbrand. So step one, we realized we had something that we could really, unlock and make a bigger part of what we're going to do. And when Leo Burnett and our cross-agency team gathered to do the briefing, it was kind of a co-created briefing. We actually took them to Manchester, where we make over 1 million boxes of cereal every day.
I love stories like this.
We were in the factory, and it was a fabulous factory tour. And then we took them to this really cool warehouse. It was a perfect juxtaposition of kind of our old legacy factory and this warehouse that had been transformed and rejuvenated. And we had a big surprise visitor. And that visitor was Cornelius the cockerel, dressed up in a costume, okay? And you're in this like briefing. It had been very fun and engaging briefing, but then Cornelius rocks up and the whole thing gets disrupted in the best possible way. And it wasn't just the agency team that was disrupted. All the creatives absolutely loved that we brought him, but the actual hotel guests and people in this warehouse, he was like, all of a sudden doing selfies in the middle of our briefing. And you could see we had a couple of creative teams actually at the briefing, which was another special part of this process. We did this right so closely with the agency. There was no separate briefing. It was all together, and there were multiple teams in the room. And you could see Cornelius had sparked something, right? Fast forward to the first creative response. We were lucky enough to get over to London, looked at a lot of storyboards, and there were a lot of amazing ideas. I would say at least 2/3, maybe half of those ideas had Cornelius featuring in some way.
Wow.
And would that have happened without him showing up in the costume? I guess we'll never know.
Yeah.
Fast forward again, we've got the leading 2 ideas on the table, and we're deliberating as a team, which way are we going to go with this? And we were again in London. This was the day we were going to buy the work. And we'd, of course, had lots of discussions about the work. We were at a point where Leo Burnett had come and kind of refined it based on all of our feedback. And we asked them to give us the room. And they tell the story a lot. We asked them to give us the room. We needed 30 minutes. And we needed to go around the table and confirm that all of us on the client side would be in a position to back the bird. And that was the phrase that got coined, and it was Brona, who's right now on mat leave, who coined that phrase. But it was just such a rally cry. We're going to back this bird, and this bird is going to be bigger and bolder than you can imagine. And Mark Elwood, our creative director, Marcus Aitman, our ECD on the project, both of them just had the vision of the swagger, the confidence, and really the mojo that this bird could bring to work, literally waking the world up again to the Kellogg brand. So that's how we got there. Anything you want to add, Stephen?
No, I think what's an interesting observation, like just out of John Haggerty's session, and one of the things he alluded to was going back to what made you successful. When he gets a brief, and he was talking about kind of back in the day, he always asked the business or the client, say, well, what is it that made you successful in the first instance, and how did you build your business? And that's ultimately what we did with this work. And we found we had a nugget there in terms of the strong DBA and distinctive brand asset that is Cornelius, and we said, all right, let's go after it and back it. And it didn't come without any nervousness. We need to establish first and foremost through qualitative testing, obviously, is he an asset in the strong, distinctive brand asset across all of the markets?
With positive associations,
Absolutely,
like old and tired.
And this is the thing, Connor, I think even though he's been on our box of cornflakes, and cornflakes, is the initial cereal that built the category back in the day, he's never really been brought to life. So we needed to do an awful lot to understand, right, how is he going to manifest, or how is it going to manifest, and what's his personality, and what way is he going to show up? And obviously there was an awful lot of discussion about that, but great discussion with the agency and indeed with our animation partners, Frame Store, when they got their hands on it.
So good. You mentioned swagger. The music plays a huge role in this, and many years ago a friend of mine got me into Jurassic 5. So I'm an absolute huge fan. I heard it, I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. How did that come about? And then it's the first time they've ever licensed music for an ad. I'd love to hear that story. And have you met them?
Maybe this week. No. You know what? That is also a fantastic story. So when we first started talking music, it was critical that we got this right. Like, I don't think there was any part of the creative process that had kind of a higher standard and a more opinionated group of stakeholders. But it started with, a disruptive idea that we might use Hot Stepper as the track. Yeah. And you could tell just by that suggestion that this work was going to have attitude. This work was going to have impact. But we decided that we needed to see a few other options. And so our agency partners kind of went aside and went to the well, looked at a lot of different tracks. They came back to us with 3 other track options, and amongst them was Jurassic 5. And we played that track and definitely did love it, but then didn't make a decision until we're on set while we're in Spain. And I think the agency did something really smart here. They basically set up boomer speakers everywhere that we're recording, and anytime the camera got out, they would pump the track to the song. And now, of course, when we listen to the song, there are some magical moments in that song that you actually cannot believe true.
Yeah.
The fact that it's written with snap, crackle, and pop right in the song, the fact that it talks about the original right in the song, It was absolutely fortuitous. But I think what sold us on the track was hearing it every single day of our shoot.
That's so clever.
We fell in love with it, and it started to become, you couldn't imagine Cornelius without the track.
Yeah.
Anything more to add on that one, Stephen?
No, not really. But I think, look, in pre and post testing, it's been standout in terms of the reaction to it with consumers, which is absolutely fantastic. And I think one of the jobs we wanted to do with this work was, really contemporize the Kellogg brand. And I think the track has allowed us to do it along with the animation. So it's been absolutely fantastic. And it just demonstrates the importance of music within creativity. And it's, yourself, you look at some advertising and they live or die on the basis of the track. And I think with this piece of work, it's definitely the case.
I always think one of the ones that stands out for me in music is, I don't know, the brilliant Emer McCarthy. She was in O2 at the time. She acted Paddy Power. And when they were launching the O2 Arena and the priority tickets, Florence and the Machine was the track. And it was it elevated the whole thing.
Absolutely,
and, just the power of that, right? And look, there's an investment.
No,
it's not. But by doing a Masterbrand, probably allowed you to invest in that as well.
And this is the thing, and I think Jenn alluded to the fact, we've been on a journey, and the journey backed right up to the top levels of the organisation with regard to creativity, and getting to best-in-class creativity, and they backed us, to invest in music and other elements in terms of that craft and the importance of the craft. But music, another great example, the recent work from Puma, I don't know if you've seen it, the Running High commercial.
Okay, yeah.
Again, a very insightful ad about people running and it gets them on a high, but it's a nothing ad without the track. You know what I mean? The track elevates it. It's crucially important.
That's amazing. You've talked a good bit about just the organisational beliefs, the backing you, the training, and it's been a journey. Has there been something that's kind of triggered that at the leadership level? Because it's somewhat maybe unusual, but I know Diageo, for example, have the Dweeb, right? And all of their senior management are taught on how to build a brand the Diageo way. Do you have something similar to that?
So in Europe, we did start a journey of sort of marketing masterclasses, and this was coinciding with our Chief Growth Officer's ambition to really step up our marketing and creative excellence. So I'd definitely say, our CMO in Europe, Paul Humphreys, he's helped us kind of get further faster on this journey. But if I had to think about a moment, or perhaps just my own personal thought, it's as marketing leaders, how we are shaped by creativity and how that creativity becomes contagious in us is how it gets contagious in the organization. I don't know if you would agree with this, but I feel for my own self, I've been on a journey of kind of marketing transformation. The more I learn, the more I'm curious, the more I'm looking outside for inspiration and examples, the more I can bring that energy and also that ambition to the team. So it's almost like my responsibility to be hungry, to learn more, to see more, and to be inspired more. And then I do think we have an opportunity to systematize that a little bit better, right? We need to make sure that, Stephen and I, we're here in Cannes. We need to take what we learn and we need to take it back to our teams, because we want to democratize creativity and creative excellence. And not everyone will get the opportunity at this moment in their career to come and have a week where you're doing nothing but surrounding yourself with creative inspiration. So it was a bit of an answer that was all over the place.
No, it makes a lot of sense.
The short version of it is, I think creativity and a creative culture, it starts with us as marketing leaders. How are you being inspired, and how are you inspiring others as a result of that?
And that curiosity is so important, I think, in this line of business, because it's forever changing, forever evolving. Yet there are foundational principles that will remain pretty solid, and making sure that you're aware of the history, as you've already alluded to, even not just the history of your brand, but the history of other brands, how we got to where we are, and then what's changing in the landscape. Consumers' lives are changing. You've touched on that as well. How that, it's constantly looking for insight.
I think marketeers or any specialists in any subject matter, they've no real excuses anymore. And it's down to some great initiatives like you're doing here in your podcast. It's click of a button and you can get really informed about what's happening out there in the world. Now, it takes a disciplined approach to do it within our busy lives, but as Jenn has alluded to, if we don't do it as marketeers, no one else in the organisation is going to do it, and it's our role to very much inspire the organisation, whether that's right up to our CFOs, to our general managers in the markets. We need to inspire them with regard to all the empirical evidences out there with regard to marketing at its best. If you do it well, this is the return you can make for the business.
Yeah. Somebody said to me as well before, and we don't know till we land in roles, but looking for roles where there is that curiosity at all levels. Like, I'm really lucky where I am now that like leadership really want to learn. They know a lot about marketing and they're constantly like, we want to learn more. And that's such a brilliant culture to have. And I just really get that impression that's a huge part of the great culture that you guys have.
Yeah, like we talk about a growth mindset, and it's something that we look for in individuals, like whether it be in Jen's team or other functions in the business. And I think we absolutely have that kind of word within the organisation with regard to just going out there, pushing ourselves, getting for better. And we need to. We're category leaders, particularly in cereal, also kind of challenging there in snacks. But in cereal, we're category leaders. So retailers expect it of us. Consumers expect it of us. If we don't deliver greatness in whether it be product or marketing, like who else will? We are the ones that need to step up and do it.
Can I ask a bit, we touched on it earlier on the pricing piece, right? I can go into a retailer and I can find a similar looking product with a very similar name sometimes for a fraction of the price. Now, without getting into who's who, but like you take an own label brand of flakes, I won't even dare to give them the full title, and your brand, there's definitely a difference. But in the consumer's mind, when they're hard pressed and maybe struggling, they've got that choice to make. How it must be a huge challenge for you guys, and you're thinking about it because you're talking about business transformation, not just communications.
Yeah, 100%. I would say not just us, but the entire consumer packaged goods industry. One of the most challenging things we face is own label. And really, own label, they're a challenger brand. You know, they're making really good foods. They can replicate our foods, not perfectly, but quite quickly, right? And some of them are even starting to get decent at brand building. So, you know, one thing I love is a value at Kellanova. We don't underestimate the competition, right?
Yeah.
So definitely the branded players, and there's some brilliant branded players in the cereal category as well, but the own label players have leveled up the game. And certainly the price equation is one of our biggest challenges, right? But if you go back to what our responsibility as marketers is to ensure we're creating a value equation that makes our foods and our brands worth it to people. And what does it look like? Well, it starts with ensuring we do have superior food, right? Superior from a taste preference perspective, superior from a nutrition perspective. And then we want to make sure that we're giving them opportunities to engage in our products in a way that adds meaning and value to their life. So something that Kellogg's has been known to do since almost the beginning was on-pack promotions, right?
Yeah.
So would you believe that right now in the UK, if you wanted to send your kids to a soccer camp with one of the EFL clubs or one of 72 EFL clubs across the country, with Kellogg's, we would give you that opportunity. That's not something that own label is going to be able to do, right? We can do that uniquely as Kellogg's, and it's meeting a real need in the community and creating a real connection with those clubs, with those families, and earning us the right to sit at their table every single morning. So those are a couple of examples. I think innovation obviously is another one, right? We have a really strong core range of foods, but that core range of foods, you know, as soon as they're big and scaled, those are the ones that the private label or own label competitors want to go after, and they go after them at prices that are really not sustainable for businesses. You know, they're very, very difficult to compete with. But what we can do is make sure that we're not only continuing to improve our core recipes, but also bringing new foods, more differentiated foods, foods that have kind of future fit benefits that consumers are looking for. So it really has to be sort of full on, full court press. And I would go back to the kind of key message. You can't underestimate the competition, and specifically not own label.
And probably some of them came, I think, the discount stores, and some of them have been in the market for 20 years, but like they probably have come up, maybe not out of nowhere, but like it certainly changed the whole dynamic of the market, because there's just much more of them now as well. Like there's not just one own label, and people don't mind it being in their basket either. Like there was, like I'm thinking back to way back when it was like, I think, was it Quinsworth had the white boxes and the red. You kind of didn't want to be seen dead with them.
With the yellow label and Super Quinn back in the day. For those that are not Irish may not get that one. But you're absolutely right. And I think it's one of the challenges for CPG businesses. And the way I simplify it for friends or family, how's your job going, what keeps you up at night, etc., is that dynamic. Like they represent 20 to 25% of the market now in UK and Ireland, and more so in some other markets like Germany. So it can be really challenging. And we have a presence there, but we don't have an established presence there. We may have 1 or 2 SKUs in each of the retailers, and you'll never get to a lot of SKUs in there. That's just their business model. So it can be very challenging if you've got 25% consumers, 25% of your footfall going to stores where you don't have an established presence. You can see the pressure it puts on the likes of businesses, likes of ourselves. So but look, it's something that you always have to keep a step ahead of and be as progressive as possible in terms of the offerings that you bring to the table, whether it be food, promotions, or any communications. Consumers sitting down watching the TV, we want them to enjoy the content that we put out there, and that's something that we can do ahead of own label foods and stuff like that. So.
Can I add one little piece on this, Connor? So I think you've seen a lot of the work within the campaign, right? But one of the very specific aspects of the brief was that you do you, don't compromise your morning, and don't compromise your choice of cereal. And we really specifically meant don't compromise and choose own label. And we had the hero campaign work, and that was all anchored in the see you in the morning end line, and really that see you in the morning, which was deeply resonant with that you do you insight. But as we started to brief in the shopper, our shopper partner, Le Shop, came with a really clever in-store tagline, and that was get the original. Get the original. Yeah. And that seemed so simple. It was connected back to the song, the Jurassic 5 song. And coincidentally, and this is the really fun part, we had seen this really cool piece of work from Landor as they were delivering our brand world. They had taken our logo, the iconic Kellogg logo, and they had cropped in 2 of the letters, the OG, the original. Yeah. And then Leo Burnett had taken that OG crop and actually presented us a bold out-of-home activation. That's right. That has become one of the most talked about, buzzworthy parts of the campaign, and was actually submitted for a few Cannes Lion awards, although we're very, very devastated that we're not on the short list. I think, the reaction from the industry,
robbed.
We feel a bit robbed. But to be honest, Connor, that was one of those things that kind of the path to get there wasn't straight. But when I look back and think, to your question about private label, who else can say the original? Who else can say the OG? And the OG is sitting within your logo. Yeah. That is creativity. That is the power of an iconic brand that's been built over 100 years.
Yeah. And the ability to be able to do that, there's very few brands that can do, like you could put, I think, the Corner Vacay out there and people would know, like, that's so powerful. And you go into a store and you see the Kellogg's range and it's so, like, it's a block. Like, it's really, really powerful in the stores. So, amazing campaign and robbed the old can't short list. But how have you been measuring the success? I'm going to guess you're measuring a lot of stuff.
No, absolutely. And it's all about effectiveness. And I think, first and foremost, from a pre-testing perspective in Ipsos, this ad scored extremely highly, which is absolutely fantastic and gives real confidence with regard to its ability to drive short-term sales, particularly System 1 also. I don't know if you'd see the System 1 report that was released after we published the work. But again, really strong evidence suggests this will really drive short-term sales again. And I think one of the standout pieces is just sentiment that we're seeing, Connor. Yeah. Like, the sentiment is off the charts. Like, it's uncomparable to anything that we've done before at a Masterbrand perspective in Kellogg. And that sentiment right across the region. So in UK and Ireland, where you've got a really established presence, a really established brand, 60% plus penetration within the category, and Kellogg well known, the sentiment there is really strong. But equally in markets such as France and Italy, it's extremely positive. And it's down to the creativity. Yeah. It's down to the swagger, how we've showed up, the animation, Cornelius, the song, and the storytelling and the emotion that draws out of people. So it's given us really strong confidence that we're onto something here, which is absolutely fantastic. But we need to build on it. That's the next step. We need to take it on. You don't get to take a holiday in these things. It's always what's next. Where's the next piece?
So what is next?
Well, as Stephen said, we're doing a pretty robust effectiveness assessment, right? So we've got some early indicators that this campaign is working. Over the next few months, our effectiveness journey will, I would say, turbocharge. So between econometric modeling, brand love studies, etc., we need to make sure we're starting with insight. What's working? What needs to work harder? And how do we optimize? So that's kind of with the existing assets. Yeah. But then there's two big jobs to be done that we've barely scratched the surface, and this is what's getting us excited next. So we talked about you do you, and this idea that everyone has a unique kind of Connor moment in the morning, or a Jenn moment, a Stephen moment in the morning. we want to find a way to tell those stories in a way that feels more personalized, more customized, and of course really connects emotionally with consumers. So we're going to be looking this week for really big inspiration in that space. So that's kind of one aspect, the you do you, and where we can go with that. The other aspect comes back to our brand vision and purpose. The purpose of the Kellogg Masterbrand is to inspire healthier and happier starts. I think we're doing a fantastic job on happier. And the sentiment scores that Stephen alluded to, that's a great evidence of happiness. Yeah. But what we want to do is go on a journey of helping people start healthier. And so you're going to see us stepping in with products and communications that really tap into some of the reasons that people want to eat cereal. And they're not just for happiness. There's definitely that joy and positivity that you want to start the day. But very often, breakfast is the healthiest meal of the day. And we want to make sure that making a Kellogg's choice is one of the choices that can be a foundational piece to your healthier lifestyle journey. So you're going to see us stepping into that one. It's a tricky one, right? The cereal category has lots of baggage, and we know that health is also a very nuanced, very personal thing, but we know that people want to live longer, better, and we want to help them be part of that solution.
And you don't need to eat Cocoa Pops every day. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, you know.
And there's no judgment if you do. You know,
you got the cornflakes on a Monday, the crunchy nut on a Tuesday.
Is actually in Cocoa Pops. And the fact that kids are eating with milk, and there's a lot of vitamins in there, and, you know, they're getting the great start to the day. But would I argue that you should sprinkle some all-brand original on there? I probably would.
But that's I guess that there is a range for a reason. There's the right moments
you're
for.
Exactly right, Connor.
I know. The great thing about cereal is it's not just for breakfast.
Yes,
I love
this too. We could do something
bowl
with this,
of crunchy
Connor.
nut, like you know when you're like
when
you had a big
is
lunch.
your favorite time to have a crunchy nut?
If you had like a big lunch, man, you don't want dinner. Like then a bowl of crunchy nut cornflakes. The problem with the crunchy nut is, I don't know if this is a product thing, right? But the milk to crunchy nut ratio never seems to match, so I'm always left with more milk. So I have to put in more crunchy
nut. Oh, Connor, I think we've got a little.
This is you do you moment for sure.
We're going to take this moment and make it happen online. We see you, Connor.
I know you do. Listen, guys, thank you so much for stepping out of all the amazing work here at Cannes to take me through an amazing journey, an amazing campaign. And so these things, like, they're never straightforward, they're never easy, but you obviously do it with such like data, evidence, effectiveness, but like charm as well. People must love working with you.
We enjoy the journey. I would love it if Stephen could tell you one more story.
Oh, please do.
Will you let us?
Yeah, of course.
He's Irish. He likes a good story. Okay.
Is he going to start singing?
Maybe later on, Connor, I'll meet you and might have a song. But look, I think so. We shot this out in Spain this time last year in Madrid, and we shut down the city for nearly 2 days. Parts of it, not all of it. But we were very fortunate the day we landed with my colleague Aidan Mulligan and Fergus Brady, who were both integral in the delivery of this campaign. And it was the Monday after Spain had just won the European Championships.
Okay.
So you can imagine we get into Madrid, about to go on a shoot for 4 days, and all the streets are shut down. We're going, it's a bit early. We're shutting down this for the set. We're going to go shooting tomorrow. Well, it's not for you guys. It's for the Spanish national team. We go, all right. So we stood there with everybody celebrating, and it was great. And the bus came by with all the players on it, and it's a really young team. And I took a snap, and on the side of the bus, it was Adidas. It's just the beginning. And we've kind of been on a journey about the creative journey that we've been on. We've been selling into the business, and it's an image I've used in several presentations. That sentiment of it just being being the beginning, and it absolutely is for us. We've hit on something here that's really kind of resonating with people. It's really resonating in terms of culture, and we've got a platform now, and a really strong platform, one that we haven't had for a while in the brand. In all honesty, in terms of the equity I have. But we have it now, and it's our accountability to jump on from this point, you know what I mean, and use that as a catalyst kind of for bigger and better things, and that's ultimately what we want to do.
You said earlier on, we touched on the legacy, the 120 years, like the history, and actually in many ways I think people will look back in 20, 30, 40 years at this moment and say that was probably quite a defining moment for this brand. You probably may not think about that, but like to think about that and kind of go, actually, we've been part of something pretty special.
No, and we for various different reasons we're at a pivotal moment in this company's juncture and this brand's juncture as well, and we don't take it lightly. But we've done something great here that allows us to spring into the next chapter with a great degree of confidence about ourselves, our agency partners, and deliver on that greatness, and that's ultimately what we want to do.
It's amazing. It really, honestly, it's a wonderful, wonderful story from a wonderful brand. I said, you both bring such a charm, energy, positivity to the whole thing. Just congratulations. And there will be many, many awards. Never mind this lot.
Thank you, Connor. Well, this is such a treat. Thank you for giving us the gift of telling our story and also just meeting you in person. What a treat.
Thanks, really, guys. Take care.
You.
Cheers. Well, what a fascinating episode. What a fascinating story. Hearing the background to why they went on the Masterbrand journey, the challenges that they face, and they're very open and honest about some of those challenges, but how they went about bringing people along the journey was absolutely fascinating. And of course, you could see and hear some of the agreement with them as we talked about some of the challenges of having, international campaigns, like the scale of an international campaign, how that works for local markets. So I hope you enjoyed that episode. Of course, thanks again to Freeman International for their support of these episodes. And if you liked this episode, please do like it, rate or review. That's What I Call Marketing is a great way for us to reach new amazing marketers just like you. So that's it for this episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Until the next time, from me, your host, Conor Byrne, take care. Thanks for tuning in to That's What I Call Marketing, the Cannes Sessions. Brought to you by Freedman International, the international campaign experts taking the pain out of your multi-market campaigns.